what's going on to my legion of intellectual freaks out there? Of course, it is me, Quita, aka Malaysian Quita, and welcome back, my friends, to SINTV, which stands for Smart Intelligent News. And guys, that's what I'm really bringing today with today's hot topic. This is probably the hottest topic that some people are talking about, and it's in regards to the socio-cultural and gender stereotypes that's in the trailer for the new Ghostbusters film, which is supposed to be coming out in July. So guys, that's the reason why I named this video today that Ghostbusters should have been an all-male cast, and let me tell you why. Let's just get into it. First off, one thing I like to do is I like to talk with definitions so that people are clear about what this episode and what this video is about today. So there were two things that I noticed that some people were talking about. Number one was the issue of feminism. Pretty much saying that it was the trailer, well, some people were saying that the trailer was very feminist, because feminism, the idea of it is having the balance between the sexes, okay? And then the other definition I found is social justice, because a lot of times when people, when some people use this term, they don't necessarily really understand what it means. So let's get into the definition. So first, this is coming from Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and this is the definition for feminism. Feminism, there's two parts of it. There's the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. And the second part of it is organized activity in support of women's rights and interests, okay? So that's the simplified definition. Now, the full definition of it is the theory of the political, economical, and social equality of the sexes. And then the next definition is the organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. So two different ways of saying it, okay? Then on top of that, let's look at social justice. And this is coming from Wikipedia, actually. Social justice is the fair and just relation between the individual and society. This is measured by the explicit and tactic terms for the distribution, of wealth, opportunities for personal activity, and social privileges. In Western as well as in older Asian cultures, the concept of social justice has often referred to the process of ensuring that individuals fulfilled their societal roles and receive what was their due from society. And I think this is where some people are having a clash in regards to the Ghostbusters film. And here's something that I think a lot of people, or the trailer, that some people are not considering in regards to this conversation. Do you see that the whole cast is like all female comedians? And there's still this stereotype sometimes that I hear that female comedians are, bitchy and they can't work together. So shouldn't we be giving props for women actually coming together, regardless of how they may feel about each other interpersonally, and coming together to make this film, a film that is from the 80s? And you tell me how many films from the 80s has had a international pop cultural impact like Ghostbusters? The only ones I can really think of are, of course, like Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, Doctor Who, those type of films. Those series have, crossed over, and there's tons of fandom. But, and Mad Max, how could we forget? Mad Max Fury Road won tons of Oscars, right? But here's the thing, and this is the thing that I personally feel, is that yes, if this upcoming Ghostbusters film, and even with the trailer, if this was an all-male cast, nobody would be complaining, because there's an expectation when it comes to certain elements within sci-fi is that it's supposed to be male dominated, and that's it. And that the female representation, and this is thinking in terms of classism, if you really think about it, is that the female characters should be like, Princess Leia, where it's like half, strong, but not too strong, and a little submissive. But here's the thing, that's a little bit hypocritical, because this is the reason why I love sci-fi and fantasy as a as a genre, and there's so many subgenres within this particular genre. And if you really think about it, sci-fi and fantasy is like a giant subculture because of all the fandom and the hardcore fans out there that really respect these particular series and the artwork and etc here. But here's like, I find this really kind of, well, to me, this whole thing is really interesting, though. It's just because, yes, if it was all men, and kind of tying it back in, if this was like sci-fi is the type of genre that it kind of breaks the rules and often talks about, it's a reflectiveness of our society. Like if you look at Star Trek, for example, a huge fan of Star Trek, there are topics in the, like, for example, the original series, or TOS, that talk about, race, like racism and the imbalances of societal classes, and even things like the Prime Directive, following certain key core rules, but then there are some societies that don't follow the Prime Directive. So what do you do in regards to that? So those type of things, right? So to kind of tie it back in, to the film, I mean, to the trailer, I thought the trailer was well done. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. The core other thing that people have been talking about too is in regards to Leslie Jones and her character and the way that, she was portrayed. She was working, on the, I think she's like a bus attendant or something like that. But here's the thing though, Hollywood is fantasy sometimes, okay? And for some of these people out here who are up in arms and jerking off, all pissed off about this, you cannot always expect Hollywood to be accurate. And on top of that, the people that are creating this, they're doing it in the way that they want to kind of portray the world, and how things have changed. Because if you look at the trailer, it's 30 years after the original films, okay? And even then, I'm sure, because what I did was I did some research in regards to both movies, and Ernie Hudson, who plays Winston Zedmore, I mean, that was a diverse cast if you really want to think about it, I mean, to have at that time an African American man playing that role, I mean, I'm sure he got a lot of crap for being black, and so you really can't win, And then when it comes to these women, in this upcoming movie, it's just like, I just think people have unrealistic standards, okay? This is a completely different storyline from the original, from the way I saw the trailer, from the original movies. It's a completely different angle. Of course, I guarantee, this is just my prediction, that they may have cameos of people from the past in this film, but it's a new generation, so you can't expect the people, directing this to make an exact clone of the first and the second movie. And here's the other thing, to some of these people that are complaining about the representation, the presentation, it's a two-way street, because on one hand, Leslie Jones, I think she should really honestly stick with acting and get out of Saturday Night Live. I think that she did a fantastic job with this. Now, is it stereotypical a little bit? Yeah, I mean, it would be cool to see an African American scientist, but how about Asian people? How about Latino people? How about other cultural groups? I mean, it just seems to me that everyone's just kind of talking about this in a black-white way without looking at the shades of gray, and it's just it's really, really, really frustrating to me. So let's look at this actual lineup of characters. Okay, so we have Melissa McCarthy as Abby Yates, who is a published author on the subject of the paranormal. We have Kristen Wiig as Ernie Gilbert, who is a professor at Columbia University who co-authored the book with Yates. We have Kate McKinnon as Jillian Zoltzman, who's a nuclear engineer and Yates' new partner. Leslie Jones plays Patty Tolan, who is she's a subway worker, not a bus attendant. Pardon me for that. who stumbles across the main supernatural threat. And the thing I like about her, though, is she kind of does reflect a little bit of New York. This is not saying that everybody in New York acts this way, but when we think of women from New York, we think of their confidence. We think of them being creative and quick to think on their feet. And I think that her character represents that, to a certain degree. If we want progression, I do agree with this. Yes, I feel that Leslie Jones should move on and play other roles that challenge what people think about African American characters. But here's the juxtaposition. It's not as easy as you think to get certain roles. And when you're a new actor, as frustrating as this is for me to say, sometimes you have to pick the stereotypical role to get your foot in the door, because no one knows who the heck you are, especially if you're a comic and Leslie has been doing this for quite some time, but it still doesn't matter. Sometimes you just need that one key role, and then you see people branch off and do so many different things. Heck, we could say the same thing about Will Smith. We could say about Denzel Washington. We could say even Sidney Poitier, but at the time it was a different cultural sphere. He had to take roles that I'm sure, that he was like, this is not my cup of tea, but I'm making progress for my people, so I'm going to take it anyway. But now we're in a time, though, and do you see how cynical and how many layers of this issue there is? Yes, we're in a time where there needs to be progression of roles, but there's still minorities making these roles and supporting it. So if we want different roles, or if you really, really, really want accuracy, there's something called a documentary. This is sci-fi. Sci-fi is the type of genre, a sci-fi comedy is the type of genre that anything can happen. And by the way, being a comedian doesn't mean that you can be, doesn't mean that you have to be politically correct. That's the opposite of what it means to be a comedian. To be a comedian is somebody who's always thinking outside of the box and maybe doing things that may piss people off, or things that need to be addressed. And this is not the film to really be talking about social justice issues, really. There's documentaries. Why are some of these same people that are complaining about gender imbalances, and I put that in quotes, and all this social cultural stuff, how about these are the same people, some of you, go out and support documentaries? We got a whole lot of other issues in this country, my friends, like homelessness, like making sure that everybody has proper health care, such as, children all the way up to adults being educated properly, but they can't afford it because the cost of education keeps going up and up. How about some of you support those issues instead of some of you guys moaning and groaning about a film like this? That's just me, okay? We got Chris Hemsworth in here, Andy Garcia. So the cast is pretty well blended, and for a Hollywood film to even have an African American woman in a leading role like this in a sci-fi film, it's been quite some time, okay? And you also have to understand, this is the character representation, and this is the environment, and might be the mood. And to be honest with you, some of these actors, they'll do what they have to do, and if they like the role, they'll take it. They don't care what some of us think, it's important to care about the Ghostbusters, fan community and stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm sure this director is going through absolute hell, and this crew is going through absolute hell, because you got some of these super fans who want every single little detail of what was in the previous movies. And you also have to remember, the previous movies were made in the 80s. This is 2016. It's completely different types of techniques and cinematography and graphics that may be done. So if you don't want to support this film, that's fine. But for me, I will always support a film that's showing women working together. And then on top of that, a film of a show that I really enjoy. Because guess what? A movies, and just a whole culture that I really enjoy, period. So here's the bottom line. If you don't support this film, and this film doesn't do well, because remember, Hollywood, one of the elements of Hollywood is revenue. And if this film doesn't do well, guess what? There might be the possibility that there may never be a Ghostbusters film, Why do you think Transformers and all these other movies, X-Men and all that, have done well? Because there's been enough revenue to care to make a prequel and other sequels. But if if some of us really want to be anal retentive and really cut this film down to some basic stuff that's been in Hollywood for I don't know how long, what do you think is going to happen? Pardon me. They're going to not care. So that's really, the bottom line. I think the cast is really well done. I think they have done a great job. I think the girls are hilarious. They're all hilarious in their own unique way. But this was recently posted a couple days ago, and this is coming from E! Online. It says, Ghostbusters reboot racist. Leslie Jones responds to critics after trailer is released. She came, she saw, and she put them in place. Leslie Jones, which she always does. I mean, when it comes to social media, she holds it down, And I actually have new respect for her for taking this role. Because, remember, I did a video a while back kind of talking about what she, some of the jokes she was talking about, in regards to, like, slavery and stuff like that. But I think she really redeemed herself, and I think she should go into acting. I think she would excel just looking at the trailer initially. So it says Leslie Jones took to Twitter last Thursday to respond to critics who claimed that the new Ghostbusters is racist because the character played by the actress, the only black main cast member, is the only hero who isn't a scientist. The first trailer for Paul, hopefully I'm saying this right, but for Paul Fagan, or Fegan, I think, or like Fegan, hopefully. You know how I am with pronouncing things. New movie was released Thursday. It shows Jones' character as a New York City subway worker. Kate McKinnon, as the Ghostbusters character, works as a nuclear engineer, while Kristen Wiig and Melissa Carthy are authors about a book about ghosts. I can't even talk today, right, guys? So I thought that this was interesting. There were tweets being said like this: Ghostbusters trailer subverts gender roles, but the black woman can't be a scientist. She has to be a street-wise sassy side chick. And then another person says, I also think it's bad and a bit racist that the token, and here's the thing, once again, people are saying it's racist, but then people are saying the terminology that a lot of African American actors have dealt with is being a token character. I mean, if I was in a film and I was the only minority, I wouldn't want to be known as the only minority or token character. But here's the thing I've kind of learned being on the independent side as a critic and reviewer myself is you can't satisfy everybody. Everybody's going to have their views and how they feel about you. I deal with this all the time on YouTube. All you can do is just be yourself, keep going, and keep growing. And a lot of times, too, when people are successful, especially people of color or women being successful, there's always gender bias that comes with that, too. If a man is successful and rich and, does everything that Leslie Jones is doing, that's okay. But because it's Leslie Jones and she's trying to build a different aspect of her career, people are going to have a problem with it, right? So the person goes on and says that the token black member of the group is a streetwise Subway employee. I don't think she's trying to make Subway employees look bad. This is all personal interpretation. I just think sometimes people take things too interpersonally, It's just crazy, okay? So then this is what Jones says to one Twitter user. If they made me a scientist, you would be mad at what type of scientist? Seriously, it's an effing movie. Get over yourself. And then she replied to another person, you haven't seen the movie yet. You don't know what WTF my character is. You buy a trailer. She's like, OMG, are all that ignorant? So MTA worker is trash? And then that's what she said to another person. And here's the interesting thing, too, is that the reboot trailer states that 30 years ago, 4 scientists saved New York, okay? Ernie Hudson, like I mentioned, was in the original 1984 film, okay? And he was the only black character, but he was not a scientist, but he still was a great character, So it's just, I don't understand. And I thought this was good too, for what she was saying is that regular people save the world every day. So if I'm the stereotype, then so be it. We walk among heroes and take them for granted, Jones tweeted. It's not a man, woman, race, class thing. It's a Ghostbusters thing. And as far as I'm concerned, we are all Ghostbusters, stand tall. So I think that was well said. And for me, I was very, very impressed with that. And I don't think she was trying to make the MTA look bad in New York. I just think sometimes some people take these movies too seriously. And once again, to really conclude here, okay, yes, I do agree. If this was all men, nobody would be complaining. Nobody. They would, even if it was a black man or a Latino man, or just a man, period, nobody would be complaining, because in certain elements of sci-fi, there's still this stereotype that men can only be scientists and women can only be this. Now, are there shows that show female scientists? Absolutely. But she's got to be sexy, though. There are very rare times I see a female scientist who looks like me. And I guarantee you that if Leslie Jones looked like, Stacey Dash or Beyonce or Nicki Minaj or anybody else, nobody would complain. They may just complain about minor things, but because she is a woman of color that looks like, these girls look like regular women. I like that. And isn't it time to have progression? Like, that's what feminism is about. Feminism is not male bashing. That's not what it's about. It's about showing alternative viewpoints in regards to gender representation. And I think that if we actually support this film, it will open up so many other doors. And who knows, maybe they may add other people of color, since, yes, the conversation has come in. But when we're making it this social justice, gender warrior issue, what do you think Hollywood's gonna do? And this is just my perspective of it. They may close those doors. So the more that we're not covering this in an intellectual manner, that's the more people are gonna be more, like, you know what? No. You know, I don't know. But guys, let me know, what do you think about the whole racism and gender inclusivity issue in regards to the Ghostbusters trailer? The movie hasn't even come out yet, so how do you know? Like, we don't have all the picture yet. Okay, and once again, like I said, this is Hollywood. If you're expecting realism, you can do one or two things. You can either become part of the Hollywood industry, be a director, make your own film and make it the way that you want to make it, or or correlating it to the community and your interpretation. But look at Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings. Look how many people bitched about that. And those films are excellent. He did his best. So it's like, you can't, it makes me mad when people just can't appreciate art sometimes and just let things go. Like, even myself, I've had to learn that. If I called racism for every little film, oh, look, the whole cast is white. Oh, therefore this film is racist. Like, if I was calling that every single day, that's not right. Maybe the film just calls for, and maybe that's the environment. Maybe it's like a Norse mythology thing, and maybe at that time those were the people of that culture, but at the same time, I can understand diversity, inclusion, but it's up to the artist to make that interpretation. So we can't call racism all the doggone time. If we call racism all the time, guess what, we're also closing opportunities for people of color to come in. There's a time and place for social justice issues, and there's also a time and place for feminism inclusion. Don't even get me started on how we isolate LGBTI actors. How about them? How about Asian actors? How about people from other countries who want to come over here, and some of us marginalize them because they don't have the right accent? I mean, how ignorant is that, right? So there's a lot of hypocrisy going on, but that's just me. Enough said. End of rant. Let me know what you think about the Ghostbusters trailer. Do you think this film is racist? Do you think it's not? Leave your comments below. And guys, like I always say, remember to get smart and stay informed.